Hey everybody, welcome back to this mini series, which maybe isn't so many anymore, on the Obsidian Tasks community plugin. This is the 5th video in the series, and today we are going to talk about working with tasks in queries. When you are designing your task management system, a lot of the ways that you will pull tasks together is through queries. So quite often, the way you're interacting with tasks, other than actually entering new tasks into your notes, is in a query. And so as we start to think about building the task management system in Obsidian that works for you, knowing how queries work and how to work with tasks and queries is really important. Now, in the last video, which I'm sorry, was super long, and I'm trying to watch that for future videos and make sure it's not quite as long, and I'll split them into parts. We went through a lot of different examples of how to construct queries. You're going to see some more of those today. But if you want to start with that video, if you're watching here on YouTube, I will put a link up in the corner to the card for that video, or wherever else you happen to be watching this video, I will put a link in the description or the text comments that go with the video so that you can find links to that video and other videos in this series. So with all of that out of the way, we are going to dive into this video, and it's really about two different things. First of all, it's about just making your queries look the way you want them to, and it's about working with the tasks in a query using the functions that are available in queries. So those are the two things we're going to cover today. There's lots of little nuance to it, so let's dive in. So let's start with editing our queries. I have a query here on the screen, and I'm going to zoom in to make it a little bit easier to see that query. There we go. I have a query here on the screen, and this is just a standard query for tasks that are due this week. There are two ways to edit a query in Obsidian. The most traditional or the most standard way to do it is simply to come over here and hover over the query, and as soon as I do that, this little edit this block box will pop up on the screen. I can just click that, and then now I can edit my query. So if I click in here into where the query text is, I can start to edit that query. So you'll see that I've already commented on it. I've got my parameters that I want. All of those different things are there. If I click out of it, then that query reappears for us. So that's the first way to edit a query. The second way, which is a little bit less standard, but we'll talk a couple of times in this video about where it makes sense to use this option, is to actually look at the source mode for your page. There are at least two ways to get to source mode that I use regularly. The first one is to come up here to the top of the screen and find those three dots, click on those, and switch to source mode. Then you can click out of it by going back and just clicking off of source mode. So that's one way to do it. My preferred way, though, is actually using the command palette. So if I do Command P on my keyboard, you can see I've already got toggle live source or live preview / source mode up on the screen because I've been playing with things for this video. If I just hit that, it will take me back to source mode, and I can hit it again to go back to the actual view of the text. While source mode is not the option that I use most often, it is really convenient for one specific thing that you might want to do as you're thinking about how you're going to set up your task management system in Obsidian. In I think the last video, I mentioned that I sometimes use Typinator as a text expansion tool. And at the end of this video, I will show you some of the Typinator snippets I've set up for doing different things with templates, or with queries and templates, sort of. However, if you would prefer not to have another tool, or you don't want to use text expansion, whatever that is, source mode provides you with a way to actually add queries or add text to queries from source mode. So let's take a look at this new note, and let's look at that case where using the source mode might be the best option for you. So the first thing that I've done in this vault, if I come over here to the side and I look at my templates, I've just set up 3 very simple templates, one for tasks that are done, one for tasks that are not done, and then I have this template for hide created date. And this nomenclature is not really that important, like why I have the plus and the underscores. That's just me being me. When I do the whole series on templates, I'll talk more about naming conventions and structures and all of that sort of stuff. But for now, it's just the weird way I name things. All right, so we are going to take this task not done template, and this is what it looks like. It's just our basic query for a not done task, and we are going to put that into this note. So I'm just going to do Command P, I'm going to insert a template, and I'm going to do the tasks not done. There we go. So now if I come over here to edit mode, there we go. I've got this. And let's say that I want to hide the created date. So let's just look at this query again for a second. So we've got created dates. Those are the ones with the plus sign. We've got several of those in this query. So if I want to add that template to hide the created date, I could come in here and click and hit enter. And now I'm going to hit that Command P to fire my command palette again. And notice what happened behind the screen or behind the command palette. That query executed again. So you can't actually insert a template in it while you're in the query edit box by default. However, if we come over here to source mode or use the command palette to go to source mode, and then I come here and I do Command P, notice that the background behind the command palette didn't change, and I go to insert template, and now I can add that hide created date. So there's some real value to using source mode if you want to use templates as a method for keeping some of the different language that you use on a regular basis, and you want to have some of that to just insert. That's a good way to do that. That is one of just a myriad of ways that we have to customize the way our queries look. So let's look at some of those other options. I have an additional note here that I've set up for this, and I'm first going to demonstrate to you, as you might guess from the text on the screen, something called short mode. Short mode is like the quick way to just make everything neater and more compact. So with short mode turned on, all of the detail, and I'll go ahead and show out full mode. This is the exact same task query. This one has short mode added to it. The one at the bottom does not have short mode added. Full mode, while it is a command that exists, and remember, you can find the key to all of these on the Obsidian tasks quick reference chart. I'll put a link in the description below wherever you're viewing this so that you can find that easily. It has all of these commands. These specific ones, the short mode and full mode, are at the very, very bottom of the list. But we're also going to be talking a lot about the hide commands, and those are in their own column. So just look for the hidden and column, and that will tell you how to use the hide command. But we're going to go through lots of examples of those too. So in short mode, when I look at my tasks, I can see what modifiers, I guess is the right word to use here, or what emojis are applied to that task, but I can't see the detail of it until I hover over that task. So when I hover over my Check Church email account, I can see that it's due on 2026-01-14, which was yesterday based on what I'm filming this. I can see that it's a recurring task. I can see that it links to the page Church Finances. And then we've got this edit and postpone button, and we're going to be talking about those quite a bit here in a second. If I wanted to go to the church finances page and see where this task lived, I could click that link right here, and that will take me to that page, and it actually highlights that task so that I can see it quite easily. The same thing is true when I'm in full mode. If I come down here to the full mode version, I can just see the full link to that note, and I can click on it, and that will still take me right to the note where that task lives, so that if I needed to actually edit the task, I could do that. However, I don't have to leave the page that the task is living on or the query is living on to edit the task. I can also do that by clicking this edit button right here. So if I click on that button, it opens up the task with all of its detail, and then I can edit anything in it I want. So let's say that I want to make this due actually today, and that will change that and hit apply. And there we go. That task is now set up for me. And it moved down a little bit because this draft ACMO paragraphs was actually due before that. So it's using the urgency sort or the priority sort I have set up. I'm just using, am I even using a sort here? I don't remember. No, I'm not. So I'm just do this week. So it's using the default urgency category. As a reminder, I'm not going to talk about the urgency metric much in this video series. It's just not something that I use. I'm typically always sorting by date or just accepting the default sort. But if you want to know more about that, again, I'll put a link wherever you're watching this to that page as well. Now, as I mentioned, full mode is the default. So when I want to make a short mode for a query, I just add the words short mode into that query, which you can see here on the screen. I've got short mode right there, and I can put that anywhere in the query I want to. It doesn't have to go at the end. I typically do put appearance related items at the end, but that's just me being me. With full mode, let's look at this query. Full mode is the default, so I don't have to type full mode in there. If I do type full mode in there, no error happens, and the query runs just like normal. So you can type in full mode if you want, but it's really not necessary. We'll see one other item where you've got a couple of different options for how you enter something in, but it's kind of like the delete option, the on completion delete option. Keeping is the default, so you don't have to type it in there. You only have to add the command if you want to delete it. So kind of like that I think that was in the first video. I will find whichever video that was in, and I will link it as a card if you're watching here on YouTube. So we just looked at how you can use the edit button to edit a task. But sometimes in a few use cases, you might actually want to hide some of those buttons that we were looking at. And Obsidian, again, provides ways to do that. So let's look at a use case where that might actually be something you want to do. So we're back here on a specific query that is pulling. Let me go ahead and show you this query. It's pulling any quote or any task that has the status name of quote, and the tags on that task include the hashtag fave for favorite quote. So as I look at this is showing me the two quotes from around my vault that are favorite quotes. Now, where I'm actually thinking about using this in my real task management system is on my book notes. So I take a lot of book notes from the books that I read, and I'm using this quote styling to style some of the quotes on those pages that are the quotes I want to remember. So separate from the book notes, the actual quotes, I want those styled this way, so it makes them easier to find. And I want to also, like, as I'm going through the book note, which is just one big long note with all of the quotes and notes in it, I want to actually be able to hashtag some of them with fave or favorite. I haven't decided what that hashtag is going to be yet. I think it's going to be fave because it's shorter. We'll see. And so where I'm thinking about using this is actually on like favorite quotes from this book. So a query on that book note specific page that just pulls together from the big long list of all of the quotes in the book, just the favorite quotes for that particular book. Well, if that's the case, then I really don't need to know what book it came from. And I don't need to know that they're hashtag fave, because they're probably going to be under a heading like this that says favorite quotes. The Obsidian Tasks Community plugin provides me with options to hide those things if I want to do so. So let's take a look at how to do those. And just for simplicity, I've actually just commented out all of these options that we're going to use, which is kind of a good way to troubleshoot a query that maybe isn't working properly. You can comment out, again, just using that pound and a space, anything you need to in order to make sure that you can figure out like what part of this isn't doing what I want it to do. So let's look at our query again. This is what it looks like. Notice those hashtags there, hashtag fave. And let's come back over here and let's uncomment the hide tags. And if I click out of that, notice now there is no hashtag fave showing anywhere in those two quotes. And then let's go ahead and edit this query again. Remember, in my use case, this is all going to be on the page for that book, so I don't need to know what note it comes from, so I'm going to hide the backlink. And there we go. That's good. And I also don't necessarily want to edit these when they're up here. They are quotes that are pulled specifically from that book note. I don't need to edit them up here. I can just scroll down on the page and find them if I need to. I can do that as well. But then I'm like, well, these aren't tasks. I mean, they are, but I'm not thinking of them as tasks. I don't want to see this pull here. So I'm also going to hide the task count There we go. And now I have this really lovely list of quotes. And in that particular use case, it would be a really pretty display. I can even put this in a call out. That would look really nice. So you can start to really customize the visual look and feel of your task queries and their functionality, because now I'm not going to accidentally hit a button and do something to one of these that I don't want to do, which is a really nice option when you are sort of protecting yourself from yourself, which we're going to talk about here in just a minute. Before we talk about that, though, we're actually going to talk about probably one of the most important skills in editing your queries, or working with tasks in your queries, which is editing the dates in the queries and working with dates in the queries. And there are a few different functionality bits that we can use to do that. So let's look at those. I'm here on a query of tasks that are due in the month of February. Now, the reason I chose this is because in a previous video, we talked about the fact that I get paid on the 15th of every month, which happens to be today. Happy payday to me when I'm recording this. And on that day, on payday, I also need to do all of the financial moving of money around with my housemate. Because I pay the mortgage in the middle of the month, she pays the mortgage at the end of the month. We're getting a little faster mortgage turnaround. I could talk with you about financial coaching as well if you're ever interested in that. But for now, we're just going to talk about these two tasks. So as I mentioned in that recent video, these start on the same date that they're due because I can't do anything with it until I get paid. And so that works that way. However, in February, I will actually get paid on the 13th because the 15th is on a Sunday. So these can actually start a couple of days earlier. And I have a couple of options. You can see that as I hovered over it. I can either click to edit the start date or right click for more options. So let's look at both of those. If I click this date, then a little calendar pops up and I can choose the new date, which is February 13th. I'm moving that start date backwards 2 days. So that edited that first task. But let's look at it for this second task. It also needs to be edited. If I right click this, notice that I have options to start it today, start it tomorrow. So these are the days I'm actually recording. Or I can postpone the start by multiple days. So this does not give me the option to move the task backwards, only to move the task forwards. Now, I know on most like due dates and things like that, you're actually postponing, but in this situation, this is actually more important to me to move it back to the 13th so that both of those are accurate. So you have both of those options, both clicking on it to open up the calendar picker or right clicking on it to access those postpone options. There is actually one more option that we can use to edit dates right in a query, and that's the postpone button. If you look at the query that I have up here on the screen, this is one we were using earlier in the video, you can see this little double arrow button right on the end, and this is the postpone option. I can either click on this to move it forward 1 day, and that will actually move it forward to tomorrow, or I can, where's that ACMO again? There we go. I can right click on it and I have many more options that I can use. So very similar to how the calendar picker worked. Now, I actually am a little bit leery of the hide post or of the postpone button because it is one that I accidentally clicked on once, didn't realize I had done it, and I actually lost a task that was really, really important in my system. Luckily, I recovered it and I realized what I was doing. I happened to catch it, but it's just one of those buttons that I'm like, it just doesn't work in my workflows. I would rather edit dates manually. If you ever wanted to consider hiding something in every query and not having to type it every single time, there is an option for that. And that is in the Tasks Community Plugin settings. So let's look at that now. So I'm going to open up my sidebar here and I'm going to go to settings. And I already have the Tasks plugin settings open. If for some reason you don't have that, you could click here on Community Plugins. You could go down here to Tasks and then hit on Options. Or you can just come right down here to the Community Plugin task at the bottom. There are a couple of different ways to get to the options. So now what we're looking for here is this global query. And notice that number one, there are some examples in here. In my actual vault, I do exclude my templates folder. So that's a really good idea to do that in all queries. And then you can also limit, and we're going to be talking about limiting quite a bit in a little while, so I'll save that for then. And notice that I can also comment, so that is an option as well. So let's go ahead and do hides postpone button from all queries. And we're going to just do hide postpone button. That is the command from the Obsidian query language. And I've got a comment here that reminds me what I've done. Now, remember, the Task Community plugin is one of the really good ones that says changing any settings requires a restart of Obsidian. In this case, it doesn't, but if it's not working, it is always a good idea after you mess with anything related to a plugin to restart it. So let's come over here and notice now on any of these, that little double arrow is missing from the end of these. So that postpone button is now not being shown on any of my tasks. And if I come in here and look at my query, it's not because of the settings in this query specifically, it is because of that global setting that we just made. The global query is really beneficial for cutting down on what you have to type in every single query. You can also ignore the global query. So let's do that here. If I come up here and I say ignore global query, and I click this, notice now I get that postpone button back. So that will just, in that specific query, ignore the global query, which can be really beneficial if you want to turn off those results for something, and you need to do that. So really good option to look at. So I mentioned just a moment ago that we can actually limit the number of results that get returned to us in our vault. So here on the screen, I have a simple query, and let's go ahead and look at that query, that is just showing everything that's not done across the vault, and it's sorting by the due date. So let's go ahead and look at that. If I scroll through here, lots and lots and lots of tasks, and I can come all the way to the bottom of it. We'll go all the way down. There are 85 tasks showing on the screen right now. If I had to look at that every day, my brain would go numb. My brain does really well when I'm only looking at the one or two things that I need to choose between, and then I just do those, and then I can think about the next thing. So I like to use limit quite often so that my brain can just process what's in front of me. So let's look at the different options we have for limiting tasks. I'm going to come back into that query, and just like I did before, I've actually commented out these options. So there are two different options for how you can just tell the query that you want to limit options. They function exactly the same way. This is simply a matter of personal preference. So the first one is the option of limit to, and then the number and the word tasks. So that's your first option. The second one is just the word limit and a number. Now, I'm lazy, so I typically just use limit and the number, but let's look at each one of them. So this one, when I uncomment it, it is going to just return a query with 5 tasks. So let's see what that looks like. So there we go. I now have a query with just 5 tasks in it. And I'm going to check a couple of these off, and I want you to watch what happens. So right now there are 5 of 85 tasks. If I check this off, now there are 5 of 84 tasks. So I am very easily working through these, but I don't have to look at the whole big long list of 84 tasks. Okay, so this is a much, much nicer style for me to take a look at. Let's look at this other option, and just so that you can tell that something different happened, I chose limit 3 here instead of limit 5. So I'll recomment this and comment this one out. If I come down here, there we go. Now I'm just looking at the next 3 tasks that are due in my vault. And I have corrected that deposit, and then it just pulls another video up, or another task up in that sequence, which makes this so much easier to work with and just so much easier for my brain to focus. There's another limit function, which is the limit by group function. If you remember, we talked about grouping when we were talking about like the simplest little project management system that you could create in your Obsidian vault. So let's take a look at how I have projects set up in this vault. I actually have them in 2 different folders. I have a projects folder that has, looks like about 6 notes in it. And then I also have a trips folder that just has this 1 note in it. So I've written a simple query here that will show me all of the tasks in those folders. So let's just take a look at what this query looks like. So this is looking for any not done task, And the path for those tasks is either going to include projects or it's going to include trips. And here is something that I do not feel like I made enough of a point of in the most recent video on queries. So I'm going to correct myself here. This or, if you're using and, or not to join logical operations, it must be in capital letters. So with it in caps, the query runs just fine. If I come back in here and I change this to lowercase, notice that the query does not run. And this is one of those things that I've been using the Obsidian tasks query language for so long. I just do it and I take it for granted, and you forget what it's like to be a beginner with this tool. So sorry that I didn't make a better emphasis on that in the last video, but that is a very important element that you need to think about. I have this sorting by file name, and then I have this grouping by file name. So the sorting by file name is showing me across those two folders, the projects folder and the trips folder, everything's going to be in alphabetical order by file name, and then it's still grouping them by their specific file. So let's just make sure we understand what that's doing. If I come down here to this trip to Australia project, I would actually like this to show up higher in my list. So I'm going to come right over here. I'm going to come into trips and I'm going to rename this Australia trip with Andrew and Susie. There we go. That has renamed it, and you'll notice it just disappeared. Where did it go? Now it's at the top. So this is also a nice way to alphabetize files between two different folders in your vault. You have that option too when you're doing queries, which is kind of cool. All right, so now if I look at this again, I've got a pretty simple task management system here. I'm seeing all of the tasks from around my vault on one page. They're sorted by the different groups on those pages. I can link straight out to that page if I want to. So that'll take me straight to that Australia trip project. Really, really nice option for doing that. But again, this is a lot of tasks, and my brain, again, just goes a little bit numb. So let's look at the options to limit by group. We're going to do this one first, and then we'll do the sort by new. And for this, I'm actually going to pull in a Typinator snippet. I mentioned that I would do this earlier. So let's open this up. And I have this, let's see, there we go, the group limit. So this is just a Typinator snippet that I have set up in that tool to return no more than 5 tasks per group. And so it's got the comment and it's got the actual code that I need for the query to run. So I am going to just add this in. And again, I can do this right in live preview mode because I'm going to use the snippet from Typinator. I don't have to use a template for this in source mode. So this is go. So it's going to return no more than 5 tasks per group. And I'm actually going to change that to 1 because I just want to see 1 task per page. I think that'll make more sense to my brain. And we'll take a look at that. And there we go. Now I'm just looking at the next due task on each page. Again, this is starting to get to like a whole functional task management system. If you kept the tasks on your page in order by date, and it would automatically show the right date, but let's actually go ahead and remind ourselves that we want these to be sorted by due date. So this is going to do, I'm going to bring in that Typinator snippet again. Let me show you that one. I have this fun little snippet set up that actually asks me a question of what kind of date do you want to sort it by? And then it inserts the correct both comment and the command. So I'm going to insert this one in here so you can see what this looks like. Make sure my mouse is where it needs to be. There we go. So there's the command, and I can click on this little option to choose the date that I want. I actually want it to sort by due, and click OK. And then I can remove this comment for myself. And now if I come back over here, it made a little bit of a difference. So now it's showing the next due task on each one of those, not the one that's at the top of the page. So I hope this has been helpful to show you some of the different options that you have for making your queries look nicer or look the way you want them to look, as well as for how to work with tasks inside of queries. In the next video in the series, we are going to explore all of the different recurrence options that you have with Obsidian tasks. Recurrence hasn't been around for all that long. I don't know. I've been using Obsidian tasks before it actually supported recurrence, but it does actually support really robust recurrence now. And so we will look at that as we continue this series in the next video. Until then, don't forget to sign up for my newsletter if you want to get reminded that these videos come out a little bit earlier if you are in my community. I include links to those in my newsletter every single week. The link will be wherever you're watching this video to subscribe to that, as well as a link to join my community as a guest for free, and a link to try out my Obsidian office hours if you want to come in and troubleshoot your task management system on your own. See you in the next video.